Hello, ladles and jelly spoons. Welcome back to another edition of This Week in Decline. As of always, we are chronicling the decline of Western civilization and humanity in general. But today, we've got somebody very special. Maybe you know him, maybe you don't. We've got hair doctor, Dr. Cory Doctorow. How are you today, sir?
Very good, or at least still vertical, which is all you can ask for in these dark times.
What are you going to do? Of course, you're born in Toronto, but as they say, they don't say Toronto, they say Toronto, just like that.
Actually, Trana.
Trana.
Tron. Yeah.
I'm from Trana.
Yeah. Like all the best Americans, I'm a Canadian.
Yeah. Turns out. You write wheelbarrows full of books, but you've recently been doing this Martin Hench series. Now, last one was Red Team Blues. Very
No,
good
that
book.
was 2 books ago. The
Oh,
last one was The Bezel.
I'm sorry. I've been busy.
It's okay.
Oh my God. So this new one, it's still Marty Hench though, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's different about this one than the last ones?
So I started writing these books during lockdown. I kind of write as displacement activity when I'm anxious. So I wrote 9 books during lockdown. And one of them was this book here, Red Team Blues, as you said. And it's the final adventure of a hard-fighting, two-fisted forensic accountant detective type. And my conceit was it would be really fun to write the last volume in a long-running series without writing the series. And then my editor confounded me by commissioning more books. And so I felt like Marty, who is kind of the Zelig of high-tech finance crime when we first meet him and has been present at every moment in which some tech bro came up with some scam, that he'd really earned his retirement by the end of the book. And I didn't want to do what Conan Doyle had done and bring Holmes back over Rickenbacker Falls. For one thing, Doyle got a knighthood out of that, and that is not something that even editors at Macmillan can do for you. So it wasn't like the same juice for the squeeze. And then I realized that you could tell these books out of order, that really the only kind of suspense that you lose if you are writing the books out of sequence is that the character can't possibly die because you have read books in which things happen later chronologically. That's broadly true of any series you're reading, right? You know that the character is not going to die. And moreover, when you write them out of order, you don't have to worry about continuity because you're not foreshadowing, you're backshadowing. You can always insert like intermediate steps in the narrative that resolve any conflict that that arises. And in fact, the more you do that, the more of like a premeditated motherfucker you seem to be. And so this is now the third one of those. The second one was set mostly in the 20 teens. This one is set in the 1980s. It's the first adventure of Martin Hench, and we meet him as a young undergraduate at MIT in the computer science program. And like many MIT CS undergrads, he is failing computer science because he spends too much time programming his computer to do any computer science homework. And after flunking out of MIT, he goes and becomes a CPA, not because it's a subject he's all that interested in, but the community college accountancy program has some really good new computers, Apple II Pluses, that he's been dying to try out. He follows his genius coder roommate out to San Francisco, where there's a gold rush underway, the weird PC bubble, when people didn't know what computers were for, who was supposed to make them, or who was supposed to buy them, or how you were supposed to use them. But everybody knew that they were going to be a big business. And Marty finds himself embroiled with a very weird PC company indeed, a company called Fidelity Computing that's run by a Mormon bishop, an Orthodox rabbi, and a Catholic priest, which sounds like the setup for a joke, but the punchline is that it's a pyramid scheme. It's a predatory faith scam that kind of evanesces the social capital of people in faith groups by getting them to rip each other off by selling each other these terrible computers that are worse even than like essential oils or timeshares or whatever else your local pyramid scheme is selling. These computers are designed not just to pick your pocket once, but to steal from you for as long as you use them and to make it as hard as possible to stop using them. So not only can you not get your data off of them, not only are the file formats all proprietary, but every part of the computer is a ripoff. So like the printer paper has been resprocketed on the fan folds, so it's slightly wider holes, and you got to buy 500% markup printer paper directly from the Reverend Sirs of the Fidelity Computing.
And this is a fictional book.
It's, it's paleo iPhones, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So Marty then finds himself working for the rivals of this company, a company called Computing Freedom, started by three women who were sales managers at Fidelity Computing. One's a nun who's left the order and become a liberation theologist and is working to end the dirty wars in Central America. One is a lesbian Orthodox woman whose family has kicked her out. One is a Mormon woman who's left the faith over its opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment. And they're repenting of their sins, having spent many years selling parishioners these rip-off PCs, and they're trying to unrip them off. They're trying to sell them
Hmm.
floppy drives that'll work with any computer, or computers that'll work with their floppy drives, printers that'll work with their computers, adapters so they can use their printers with any computer, things to resprocket so it takes anyone's paper, ways to get their data off. All of this is a great business, right? Because the margins that the Reverend Sirs are charging are insane. And so as soon as you show someone that you can pay a fraction of what they're charging and get something even better out of it, they leap at it. And that's when they figure out that the Reverend Sirs aren't just the kinds of people who are willing to make millions of dollars stealing from people who trust them, but also the kinds of people who will defend those millions with spectacular acts of violence. And what we end up with is a shooting war, not a price war. And Marty is in the middle of it. And this is kind of just this moment where everything was up for grabs, where technology was very contingent, where the impulse of so many technologists who've had their lives changed for the better by discovering technology to change other people's lives for the better was at war with the impulse of people who saw in technology an opportunity to steal from people, victimize them, spy on them. A
Hmm.
moment when, history was not yet written. And I think it resonates with this moment when maybe we're ready to rewrite history.
I hope so, because it seems like we're desperately in need, because this is eerily kind of familiar, the things that you're explaining. Of course, you're interweaving real stuff that we're dealing with now, but fair, accurate things that are happened in the 80s, but also are pervasive today, maybe, but mixed together. Um, you last time you were on, we talked about trust busting, and you were still fairly confident that antitrust legislation is on its way. Are you still feeling pretty
Oh, well, I
confident?
mean, certainly antitrust action continues apace. So things are looking a little bad in the United Kingdom after a long run of really astoundingly good work from the Competition and Markets Authority and its digital markets unit. Keir Starmer just fired the head of it and replaced him
Mm.
with the former head of Amazon UK. So that's not
So,
looking good. But, the remarkable thing to note here is that under a conservative government, the British state did more to break up tech monopolies and monopolies more broadly than they had in 40 years of Labour and conservative governments preceding it. And in Canada, where I'm from, we have an extraordinarily weak competition bureau. In its entire history, it's challenged 3 mergers and has successfully challenged 0 mergers. But last autumn, we got a new bill out of Parliament that completely overhauled the agency and its enforcement powers and gives it enormous far reaching powers that are really best in class. In the US, there's been a change of government. It's not a good one. Uh, but the one agency that is still broadly intact is the Federal Trade Commission.
mm,
And the DOJ antitrust division, which is understaffed, but they're still pressing ahead with Biden's antitrust agenda. So the DOJ just filed in the Google antitrust case and affirmed the Biden DOJ's intention to break up Google. Uh,
well,
so things are going ahead.
is there motivation from him or any other administration to go after the FTC?
Yeah, I mean, the FTC, broadly speaking, punishes people who steal from the public, and Trump has got a cabinet of bandits. And
Mm,
so, they are not friends of the FTC, but within the conservative movement, which is a big coalition that's very incoherent and wants a lot of mutually exclusive, contradictory things, within that movement, there are people who really don't like monopolies. And they're
yeah.
not who you think they'd be. They're not like kind of the what we call like a red Tory in the UK, right? They are they're like Josh Hawley and
Right.
Matt Gaetz and JD Vance. Like JD Vance said that the only Biden official he trusted was Lena Khan, the outgoing chair of the Federal Trade Commission. So, these aren't people I agree with ideologically. If they were on fire, I wouldn't piss on them. But,
Like this
they line up with
administration
me on this.
this administration feels like a bunch of children that have gotten into an abandoned car and feel like they're driving it somewhere, when in reality it's been burned out long ago.
Oh, I don't think so. I think they're like a live streamer that's broken into a nuclear silo, and their chat is full of every freak and weirdo who's been fantasizing about what they do if they had a nuke. And they're
Yeah,
like, push that button. I've
yeah.
been dreaming of pushing that button forever. No, 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 push that button. That's the one I'm an expert in. And they're pushing a lot of those buttons.
Beyond the normal lust for just jailbait ass and the other things politicians generally go for. This time, this is a weird group that we've got going. Their motivations are quite unseen.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about them. I would have been very happy if the Biden administration had taken a few leaves out of their book, right? You know,
Yeah.
when the courts say, "Oh, you can't cancel student debt," I'd love it if Biden had said, "Yeah, you and what army," as
Mm,
opposed to this pussyfooting around. I think he
yeah.
might have gotten reelected if he'd done that.
So we're just witnessing, we're staring the barrel down of these generation of people who have no backbone, and we're totally have given up all hope and said, business people, figure it out. Like, and this is what I think bother, and I don't mean to go on a tangent, but it seems like humans are incapable, because historically it's always been pharaohs and kings and people that are arrogant enough to grab the reins, and then a lot of sycophantic people who just can't seem to be anything but subservient to these people. And then people like us who just pull our hair out going,
Hmm.
it could be better.
Well, I don't know that it's that they're trusting business people per se to run things. I think they're trusting a very specific kind of business person, which, you have to go back to the moral philosophers of capitalism, Adam Smith and Ricardo and so on, to really get the distinction here. But they're trusting rentiers, right? People who earn their money by owning a factor of production, not people who earn their money by making something. So that
Mm,
by and large, this is a cabinet of people who extract money from other people who want to do something productive, not a cabinet of people who are making their fortunes by doing something. And of course,
right.
there's a little column A and a little column B in all of them. But Amazon primarily a platform, Google primarily a platform, right? This is about being an intermediary who starts off as a helpful bridge between two different groups, whether that's consumers and producers, or a certain kind of worker and a certain kind of customer for that labor, and who then usurps that relationship and funnels away as much value as possible between them. I was just listening yesterday to Ryan Broderick on his podcast, and he was interviewing the guy in the UK who wrote the book on assassination markets
Mm.
on the dark web. And all of these turn out to be scams. They're just scams, right? They're just people who are taking your Bitcoin and promising to go kill someone and not killing anyone. They always and this journalist, he had a hacker who was his source, who got the database of messages between clients for assassination and the so-called assassins, or they weren't even claiming to be assassins, they were claiming to be brokers of assassination, right? Like an eBay for assassins. And like, these guys are just like, well, we had the target but they were too well protected, or we had the target but the assassin lost their gun, or whatever. You're gonna need to send us more Bitcoin for us to kill them. And what was funny is that in the database there were these messages from people who are writing to the organizers of this, the scammers, and saying, I want to be an assassin, like, can you hire me to do some of the killing on the platform? And Ryan said something really funny. He said, here you have a genuine market in which you have people who want to kill people and people who want to pay to kill people. And the people who are running the market are just getting in the fucking way, right?
Yeah.
It's just like Uber, right? It's just like all these other, two-sided markets where they're just like getting in the way. Like, the internet's supposed to be facilitating commerce. Why can't we get our assassinations? It
The
was
dark
very,
web, the dark web isn't even so dark anymore. There's the same neo-feudalist middleman in the dark web.
yeah,
That's not fair.
yeah.
Oh God. Well, there you go. I don't know what to expect at this point, but constantly I have these AI chatbot. I always arguing because they always say nonviolence, nonviolence. I go, these people aren't going to redistribute the wealth and fix everything. Like, it seems like drastic measures. Do you think that still we could be policy oriented with the changes that we're talking about?
Well, I wrote this story, Radicalized, that came up a lot recently because it's about a message board where men whose wives and children are dying of cancer and whose insurance companies have denied them coverage get together first to console each other, but ultimately to egg each other into acts of spectacular violence against healthcare executives. And so after Luigi Mangione's alleged murder of the United Healthcare CEO, a lot of people wrote to me to say, hey, this is what happened in your story. And there's a line in that story. It's a quote from The Onion. Violence never solved anything unless you count everything that was ever solved. And I am by nature a nonviolent person, and
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. I think that we've had lots of political reform that even under really tough circumstances that occurred nonviolently. But I think that if you are running a system in which some people are not getting their way, and there is no nonviolent way for them to get their way, that you invite them to stop playing by the rules.
Yep.
And one of the things that the current administration is doing a lot of, and that I think we just saw Keir Starmer do by firing the head of the Competition Markets Authority, is they're firing the referees, right? They're getting rid of the inspectors general. They're getting rid of the cops who are supposed to monitor environmental quality and labor violations and all these other things. And I think they have the fallacy that when you fire the referees, the game stops. And I think it's more true to say that when you fire the referees, the rules go out the window.
Yeah.
And so, you look at like labor law, right? They illegally fired a Democratic commissioner off the National Labor Relations Board. So they no longer have a quorum of board members and they can't meet, which means they can't certify union elections or launch investigations into unfair labor practices, all of these things that are kind of the bread and butter of the National Labor Relations Board. And I think Trump thinks that now means the National Labor Relations Act is null and void, and that means that unions are dead. And we see him tearing up his contracts with the TSA and with other federal workers. But the National Labor Relations Act, I think Trump really has some serious misapprehensions about it. First, I think he misunderstands what it does for workers. So for most of the last 40 years, the only parts of the National Labor Relations Act that have been enforced are the parts that limit union organizing. And the ones that are supposed to protect union organizing have largely been a dead letter. That was not true under Biden, but it was true under every other administration for 40 years. The National Labor Relations Act did very little. But I think he also misunderstands where the National Labor Relations Act comes from. I think he labors under the fallacy of the Grinch who stole Christmas. So the Grinch goes out and he steals all the tinsel and all the baubles and all the trees, and he thinks Christmas is over because he thinks that it's these things that make Christmas enter the hearts of the Who's down in Whoville. But the fact is that the Christmas that is in the hearts of the Who's down in Whoville everts, right? It escapes from their hearts and finds tangible expression in the trees and the tinsel. But you get rid of the trees and the tinsel and Christmas is still there. Labor law exists because workers had solidarity with each other when it was illegal. They unionized when you could go to prison for it. They struck when you could get shot for it. And then we got labor law as a way to broker a peace because bosses needed it, because bosses could not handle the chaos of a labor movement that had no rule book. And so Trump thinks he's going to tear up the rule book and end the game. He thinks that the National Labor Relations Act protected workers. He thinks workers depended on labor law for solidarity. He is wrong on all counts.
Well, don't underestimate the pervasive surveillance of employees and that kind of thing, but also like the ability to condition a human being towards an environment where they look the other way on these things. But at the same time, I think we've lost a lot since those labor days back in the Woody Guthrie days and stuff where people would take a bullet. We're so much more confused as a species to really maybe see the forest through the trees about this. I'm a cynic. I'm a card carrying cynic.
I mean, that's very so. Not. I think it's also ahistorical, right? Are you going to tell me that in the Gilded Age, there was like there were fewer people who were angry about labor conditions, or that the conditions were worse for or better for labor organizing, and or that the people who in the century before the Gilded Age, when in income inequality and wealth inequality was significantly worse than it is now, when most people had grown up under hereditary monarchies. Like, I just don't think that's true. And the people who toppled Rockefeller were not practicing a lost art of a fallen civilization, right? Recovering those tactics is not like recovering the art of embalming a pharaoh. We're building a pyramid without
Well,
power.
they could organize, but there wouldn't be a middleman in between the organization. Like say when the police departments are cooperating with Facebook or wherever they're gathering, to where some of these resistance movements get snuffed out before they begin.
Yeah,
Thanks to
but cops used to
engagement
go
of
in.
them.
They had provocateurs. They had Pinkertons. They shot
Go Intel
people.
Pro, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, they had all these things, and like, look, I cut my teeth riding a bicycle around the frigid winter streets of Toronto at night with a bucket of wheat paste and a bunch of flyers for street marches. And for all the problems we have with our digital platforms, if you think that organizing is harder now than it was then, you're just wrong. And like, I can
Mm,
prove it to you. Fill up a bucket of wheat paste, wait for a really cold night, get on your bicycle, and see what it's like.
yeah. I wouldn't want to ever advocate for people not to go out and do shit, like do stuff. Of course, I'm just sad. I'm just sad and worried, just like everybody else. I'm not sure if we're
So
gonna make it.
hope doesn't mean optimism. Optimism is the fatalistic belief that things will get better no matter what we do.
Right.
Hope is the realistic belief that if you materially improve your circumstances, even in small ways, that you will ascend the gradient towards the world you want to live in. And that as you do, you will uncover new terrain that was occluded from where you were before, that will show you new tactics, new moves you have, new ways you can ascend further up that slope. And
Yeah.
so I'm full of hope. I have no optimism.
Right. And because the message that you deliver is constantly one of being cautious about, watch your butthole because they're coming for you. It leads to anxiety and existential crisis without a doubt. But do you think that this administration is going to be, I mean, the neoliberal policies before and all this globalist sort of imperialist stuff, that was not sustainable either. Is this administration the wrecking ball that maybe we need to destroy everything to get it back to something different?
I think there's a possibility. One of the things that I'm quite concerned with. Well, let me go back a step. I mentioned before I'm a Canadian. So Canada is now facing these big tariffs. And the Trudeau administration's response, I guess now the Carney administration's response, has been retaliatory tariffs, right? When America imposes a 25% tariff on imports from Canada, Canada imports a 25% tariff on imports from America. That makes everything that Canadians buy from America 25% more expensive. This is like punching yourself in the face really hard and hoping America says ow, right? This is a crazy way of doing things. But all of the finished technological goods and services that America provides to Canada, they are all extremely high margin businesses that Canadians can't compete with because Canada signed IP laws as a condition of getting trade with the United States.
Ooh.
So we made it illegal to reverse engineer a car, a tractor, a printer cartridge, a phone, a games console, an insulin pump as a condition of doing business with the United States, which we're no longer doing. So what if Canada were to repeal that law? It's called Bill C-11. It was passed in 2012 by Tony Clement and James Moore. What if we were to repeal that law and say that a couple of smart graduates from the University of Waterloo, if they want to, can reverse engineer a Tesla, and they can offer a package to every mechanic in the world for whatever, $50 a month or a couple $1,000s for a buyout, that will jailbreak any Tesla and unlock all the subscriptions and all the software updates forever. So when you sell your Tesla, they go along with it. The next owner gets it too. So your car's worth more. Every mechanic in the world would want to buy this. Every Tesla owner in the world would want this. And it would strike at the highest margin item of Tesla and really kick Elon Musk in the dongle. And if you think about all the other kinds of businesses that America exports to the rest of the world, and Canada's not unique in having these laws. Mexico has them under the USMCA. Europe has Article 6 of the Copyright Directive from 2001. Australia got them through the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement, and then the Andean nations got it with their free trade agreements. What if we repeal these laws and have a race to the top, where every country understands that the first country that has a successful export business selling universal diagnostic tools that let any mechanic diagnose any car. Right now, a mechanic pays like $10,000 per manufacturer for a tool that diagnoses the error codes in the car. So what if we have a universal error code decoder and we sell it to every mechanic in the world for $50 a month? That country then has the relationship to auto repair globally that Finland had to mobile phones in the decade when Nokia was at the top of the world. It is a huge opportunity. And the first country that gets there wins for a long time. And so you better fucking hurry, right? If we do this, we take out at the stroke of a pen the most profitable lines of business of the most profitable companies of the S&P 500, right? The same executives who sat behind Trump on the dais, right? This is what keeps them afloat. So this is far more interesting than retaliatory tariffs. And it is a unique characteristic of digital technology. Digital technology is not the same, right? We have there are ways in which this era is the same as other eras. And then there are ways in which it is different because the unique contingent characteristics of this moment and the technology that we use. So if we do this, we can restore the best parts of the Silicon Valley ethic because we've gone too far in the tech lash, right? Move fast and break things is fine so long as the things are bad, right? And if you're moving fast and breaking kings, right, you're moving fast and breaking the property of billionaires, that is objectively good. So, Steve Bannon, he calls himself a right-wing Leninist, right? I'm thinking of myself these days as a left-wing Milton Friedmanite. Milton Friedman, when people asked him how he was going to get the sweeping changes that he wanted, he said, in times of crisis, ideas that are lying around can move from the periphery to the center in an eye blink. And come the oil crisis, he transformed the world for the worse. His ideas were bad, but his theory of change was spot on. Trump is our oil crisis, right? Trump is dismantling the system of global trade. In the same way that the Saudis dismantled the system of global energy. Yeah. This is a moment when we can, all over the world, change how we relate to America and to each other and how technology works. And for Americans who are listening, there is no way they're going to stop you from importing this stuff. You're going to be able to get the software that jailbreaks your printer. You're going to be able to get the software that jailbreaks your car, your tractor, whatever. We're going to end these scams. Because it's illegal to reverse engineer printer cartridges and allow so your printer takes third-party ink. HP and the handful of companies in the printing cartel have raised the price of ink over and over again. Today, ink is $10,000 a gallon. It is the most expensive fluid you can buy as a civilian without a special permit. The colored water you print your grocery lists cost more than the semen of a Kentucky Derby winning stallion. So, Jeff Bezos, when he started the business, he said, your margin is my opportunity. That margin is our opportunity. We can destroy these companies, and we should.
I worry that they headhunt this talent so hard too that they would go after anybody who would be possibly able to make these jailbreaks and then just make them do busy work, pay them millions. Like Machiavelli.
You bought into the tech industry's self mythology of being a bunch of wizards. There are a lot of people who can do it. You don't have to be a rocket surgeon. There's tons of people.
Machiavelli said, anytime somebody gets too far up, you take them, then you fling them up to the villa or whatever. So I thought
right. Yeah. Good luck. There's a lot of people who can do this. This is not a tractable number of people to give jobs.
Well, thank God. Interoperability, right? Forcing it back onto the thing. John Deere, one of the most egregious examples, these poor farmers. And you said, I just saw your talk at DEF CON talking about coming down a long dirt road, to have to punch in a 4-digit code. I mean, this is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, if you want to get your tractor fixed as a farmer, right? So there's a great open air museum in Norfolk, near Newcastle called Beamish. Sort of steampunk Main Street USA. It's like a pioneer village but British. So they've relocated a colliery and an Edwardian colliery and a Victorian high street. They've got all kinds of old worldy vehicles and trams and stuff. And they've got a farmhouse with a Roman foundation. And that farmhouse has a forge. And the reason it has a forge is that since the Roman times, if you farm, you fix your own shit. Because when the storm is coming and you got to get the crops in, you don't wait for the technician, right? You fix it yourself. And if you're a farmer with a John Deere tractor, you still fix it yourself. You were expected to swap the part in and do that labor yourself. But the part will not be recognized by the computer in the tractor until a John Deere technician shows up and types an unlock code into the keyboard and charges you $200. And this is bad enough when they're just picking your pocket. But, during the pandemic, they just couldn't come out.
Yeah.
And they're not the only ones who do this. Medtronic, world's largest med tech company, they did the largest tax inversion in history. They pretend they're Irish so that they can't be taxed. They make most of the ventilators in the world.
Wow.
And they do the same thing. It's called parts pairing, where when you swap a screen from a dead ventilator into a ventilator with a dead screen, it won't recognize it until Medtronic charges your hospital a couple
To
$100
service
for
it.
a
Oh
visit
my God.
to type an unlock code. And during the pandemic, the planes weren't flying. And so the ventilators couldn't get fixed. And the amazing story here is there was a Polish ex-Medtronic technician who built an Arduino-based unlocker tool for ventilators and started just installing it in whatever cases they could lay their hands on: guitar pedals, clockside radios, lamps, and just mailing them anonymously to hospitals. And they had to mail them anonymously because it's a crime in the
Ooh.
EU to do this kind of jailbreaking under Article 6 of the Copyright Directive. The EU should get rid of that law.
Yeah. The IP, the whole idea of IP is that these business owners going around parading about how they're all about human progress and they want to make all this stuff great. But when it comes to like, teach me how you did that, like, no, this isn't for everybody, only people who pay. It's the most bizarre thing that we take for granted. And I hope that this is.
Well, it's not just that. If you teach yourself how it works, if you look too hard at it, they call you a pirate. It's not just if you that you can't demand that they tell you how to do something. It's that you can't figure it out for yourself, or they'll
Well,
put
they'll
you in
have a thing
jail.
where if the back of your phone case opens, the alarm will go off like you have an ankle bracelet and the cops will immediately find out where you are. And
I don't think that's
no,
true.
I'm saying it could happen. I mean,
I see. No, it's
yeah.
more like avoid your warranty. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Still, that's the
And
beginning.
and they do stuff like, so Apple uniquely among all high-tech firms, when you give them a phone for recycling, like as at the end of the life, when you do a trade-in, they shred it so that no parts can be harvested out of it. And a lot of phones escape this treatment. They go to the Far East where they're broken down by, low-aged workers under not great conditions, but whatever. And those parts then come back west again. And when they arrive at the US border, Apple claims that they're counterfeits, but not that they're counterfeits that Apple didn't make. What Apple does is they engrave microscopic Apple logos on sub-assembly components, trademarks. And what they say is, we don't know what quality what condition these parts are in. They may not be fit for use. And if they're not fit for use and someone sees the logo on a malfunctioning component, they will think less of our brand. And that is a trademark theory called tarnishment. And they say this is a tarnishment of our brand. And so they have these original Apple parts seized and destroyed at the border to stop third-party technicians from doing board-level repairs.
Yeah. So they'll stop at nothing. God, that's carving little logos on it. So that you say you're tarnishing the brand.
Yeah. Apple's fuckery is legendary. I have a book about this, well, several, but the last one was called The Internet Con from Verso. And I just turned in a book for Farrar, Straus and Giroux that comes out in October called Inshitification.
Right.
That's up for order now. And I just finished a meeting with another Macmillan imprint for Second. We're doing a graphic novel based on it that'll be like 2026, 2027.
Hey, all right. Yeah, I hope that we're not going through a new paradigm where things get worse. Hopefully, but I'm a doomer. I'm a gloomer.
I think that if you're asking about like, what ways up the gradient towards a better world are available to us, like there's a lot that have been closed off because of Trump, but some new ones have been revealed that are fucking doozies.
Well,
we could repeal investor state dispute settlements. We could just get rid of them.
Yeah.
Right. This is the thing where corporations can sue governments for passing environmental and labor laws if they interfere with their profits under trade agreements. We throw them away.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In the last months of the Biden administration, the UN ratified the UN cybercrime treaty. This is a catastrophe. Like, cybercrime is real, ransomware is terrible, but the cybercrime treaty creates an affirmative obligation on signatories to assist other signatories in fighting cybercrime, but does not define cybercrime. And so if your country makes it a crime to say something bad about the government on the internet, other countries are obliged to secretly order their internet companies to reveal the identity of someone who has insulted the president or the prime minister or Congress or whatever, right? We could get rid of that. Like, we're breaking down those things. Those institutions, the UN and so on, they do some really important work. But if we are going to lose UN treaties, let's make an ordered list of shitty ones and get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize that. No, so many things are built with good intentions or like a big greenwash label on it, and then it turns out to be totally mischievous, like the death tax or whatever else was. Yeah. Well, and then beyond that, you're lucky to be covering tech, and this is for the human and human kind of interactions, but the biosphere is collapsing, and the remediation of microplastics and all this other stuff is this
Yeah.
other perspective. So almost every direction you look, there'll be something interesting
But
to.
fixing stuff, the right to fix and adapt things, is not just a way to divert e-waste, although it's that.
It's
It's
true.
also a way to adapt things for resiliency. So one of the real problems of technology where everything that's not forbidden is mandatory is that when the circumstances around that technology change, for example, when the cloud goes away because, a monsoon has swept away your infrastructure, but you still want to use your solar or your solar battery or whatever it is that you're using to help survive, or you want to use a mesh router or whatever,
Yeah.
the ability to adapt things, to modify things is really important, right? So, this sets us up for a better future that way too. And while the climate emergency is terrible and only going to get worse for quite some time, there are paths out of it. The if we wanted to give every person on earth the energy budget of a Canadian, which is like an American but colder, we would need to capture 0.4% of the sun's rays that strike the surface of the earth, not the oceans, just the
Mm.
land. Right now, obviously, that requires a prodigious amount of material marshaling. It's going to require a lot of conflict minerals, rare earths, copper, and so on, but not as much as you might think. Right? It's going to require, by volume, about 1/17 of the volume that we dig up every year searching for fossil fuels, and that's just once. We do it
Okay.
once, and a lot of the
I
materials that we think of as unrecoverable are only unrecoverable because the energy costs are too high to recover them. So that's things like lithium and
right.
used batteries. So once energy is abundant, the recoverability of our existing materials goes almost to infinity. So I get all of this from a book called How Infrastructure Works by Deb Chakra, who's a leftist feminist material scientist, and just a very smart person. And in this book, she makes the argument that for most of human history, we treated materials as though they were abundant and we used them once and we threw them away. And we
Mm.
treated energy as though it was scarce. But that's backwards. We get one Earth's worth of materials pretty much forever. But we get a new shipment of energy every time the sun comes over the horizon and bathes the surface of the Earth with photons. And every time the moon comes over the horizon and exerts tidal stresses on the sea. Right. And
Yeah.
so we could, if we marshal our materials well, have effectively eternal energy, right?
Yeah.
That would give us far more access to our materials as well, because we could recover a lot of the materials that we thought of as spent or used.
Look at you going long-termist on me.
Ha.
Wow.
Well, if you're gonna try and climb a gradient towards a future you want, you have to be able to think about that future.
No, I dig it. Look, I want to believe it just as much as anybody that we can technology our way out of this whole debacle, and I hope that we can. And I think we can because I've interviewed tons of really luminary young academics who are passionate about it, and we all understand that we just need to get rid of a certain group of people and then focus on these things. Next time you come, we're up at 40 minutes, but I was talking about private equity sweeping in, buying Walgreens up now. They bought
Mm-hmm.
up the old folks' homes, they bought up the Greyhound bus, and they killed Red Lobster. What's gonna happen next? So maybe
Yep.
next time we'll cover that.
Sounds good.
Hey, love to see you. Love to talk to you. You always make me laugh, bum me out, and then pick me back up and give me hope.
Very
So
good.
appreciate it. So
Thank you.
we'll see. We'll see you in the funny papers. We'll end the stream. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.